The Petaluma Adobe, headquarters for the ranchos of General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo. In 1834, Vallejo was given this land by the Mexican government. The money earned from his ranchos was to support the army he commanded. Rancho Petaluma became the largest estate north of the San Francisco Bay, a 66,000-acre agricultural empire which made Vallejo a very rich and powerful man. In 1836, construction began on the Adobe, the rancho's main building and center of activity. Work continued until 1846, at which time California's Mexican era abruptly came to an end, and so did the construction. Even so, the Petaluma Adobe was nearly twice the size it is today, forming a quadrangle around a central courtyard. Thousands of adobe bricks were used in its construction. Made out of clay and grass and baked naturally in the sun, adobe is a good insulator against the heat and cold. But adobe walls are easily damaged or melted by wind and rain. To protect the adobe, massive redwood-covered verandas were constructed. But over the years, and in the hands of various owners, the adobe began to slip into disrepair, and half the building fell into ruin. Fortunately, the remaining half was preserved, and in 1951, the state took on an ambitious program of restoration and historical interpretation. Today, the building is a registered National Historic Landmark. The main economic activity of the rancho revolved around the hide and tallow trade. Cattle hides were a common item of exchange, and rancheros would trade with the American, English, and other foreign merchants for many kinds of manufactured goods and other commodities.
In the spring and summer, we would come to the adobe for the rodeo and the matanza, the killing of the cattle for the hide and the tallow. The courtyard would be filled with activities of the vaqueros, our cowboys. They lived and worked here when they weren't out in the hills and plains tending the cattle. Many did farm work as we grew crops, including wheat, barley, and corn. These crops were stored in the adobe for local use and for trade. Other servants spent their time carrying out various chores to keep the rancho running.
In addition to being a cattle ranch and farm, the great adobe housed a variety of processing and manufacturing operations. The lower floor of the adobe was used mainly for storage, and the manufacture of products for sale or items needed for use on the rancho. In the south wing is the spinning and weaving room.
Weaving was important in supplying blankets to the vaqueros, laborers, and other servants. Carpets, clothing, and many other items were also woven here.
This room was also used as the pantry for the kitchen. In the central part of the adobe is a large room. One end served as a warehouse and mill for the wheat, barley, and corn. At the other end is the carpentry shop, used for the repair and maintenance of the building, as well as for the making of items such as furniture, barrels, carts, and so on.
By the entrance to this room is a small shop that sold a few things to the vaqueros and workers. Things like buckles, buttons, clothes, and blankets were for sale.
In another large room on the north wing, hides were stored, ready for sale or for the making of leather goods.
Skilled workers in the tannery would produce finished leather and make bridles, saddles, shoes, and other leather supplies. The rawhide was used to make lariats, to bind beams together, and to lace the bed springs or the seats of chairs.
Outside, in the courtyard, blacksmiths turned out horseshoes, spurs, handmade nails, tools, and other metal items. Hundreds of laborers lived on the rancho and worked at the different trades. The upper floor of the adobe was used as the main living quarters for the family and for other workers on the rancho.
The whole family would come here from our house in Sonoma. This is the parlor and dining room with a fireplace at one end. In the evenings, we would sew and talk while Papa read. When all the family was here, we would have our meals together.
Next to this room is the family bedroom.
It is a large room with many beds. We slept in here with Mama and Papa. The boys would sleep on the veranda.
Next door are the quarters for the mayordomo, or foreman.
Sometimes my uncle Salvador would be the mayordomo. He ran the rancho when Papa was busy.
Vallejo himself lived on the rancho for only brief periods, at certain times of the year.
At the time of the roundup, we would bring our party clothes because Papa would give a party, a fandango. The music was played by servants who had been trained in the missions. This large central room would be filled with neighbors and friends who would come and help at the roundup. Everyone would have a great time dancing through the night.
Del cogollo de las parras nacieron las Isabeles, delgaditas de cintura y del corazón alegre.
But fandangos and fiestas were only at special times. Usually, this room was used as sleeping quarters for the single women. On the north side of the adobe are the married servants' quarters.
The artisans would sleep in these areas with their wives, as did the Hawaiian workers sent to us by my uncle, Captain Cooper.
Many of the rooms in the adobe have been furnished with authentic Rancho period furniture and equipment, making it possible to imagine more closely what life would have been like on the rancho. Thank you to all those who were dedicated to the restoration of the Petaluma Adobe and for helping to preserve so effectively this living history of California.